here for some time though, but I consider myself as a beginner and a learner. So that's why I was insisting that I would like to have a much more interactive kind of a session, like a conversation, because that's what I always believe in, that we have to have conversations to understand a lot of things that are happening, a lot of issues that are happening around us. So today, I hope everybody is able to hear my voice clearly. Am I audible to everybody? If there are any glitches, please uh, let the organizers know. Yeah. So today's topic that I was given, or we decided that we will talk about challenges of the students whom we generally call as young adults. And I know that your college actually has a lot of undergraduate courses, and I also have a association with your college because one Professor Ramchandra Reddy, who's been in your college, he was our professor. I was his student as well, and the Department of Psychology faculty, they've been my students, and there's always a long association with AV College. It's a pleasure to connect to all of you and whoever else have joined in today in this session. And this is a topic that I think I don't have to basically start explaining to you all about what is mental health and all that basic concepts. Rather, as faculty members, as teachers, lecturers, and professors who've been, constantly interacting and dealing with all these young minds, we understand the area that we're basically trying to talk about. That is challenges of today's youth, and the challenges that they face, and why it is put now in a scanner that is under mental health. Why it is very important that we need to talk more about it. Well, we have understood that this now, I'm not very sure that it is clearly categorized as pre-COVID-19 era or post. We're going to enter into very soon post-COVID era, and how long that this particular time period is going to be duration, we have no clue about it. But I think there are a lot of things that this particular crisis, I don't know how they people describe. Some people see it extremely threatening. Some people see this crisis as, maybe some of them, like a blessing in disguise. Some people try to turn it into very positive. So it all depends on how we take it and where are we seeing it from, where are we perceiving it from. So for us, for academicians, it's become a very major challenge, especially the kind of realms that we are trying to operate from. Our work environments, which yesterday also you had a lot of information about, are sometimes not very congenial for online teaching, and we are currently having all of these issues that we're facing. But the today in this particular my interaction with you, we are going to look at the audience, that is our end users, that is young adults. And I'm sure that most of you, even I have, as a initially I was also dealing with students who are who are pursuing undergraduation. Currently I only deal with the postgraduate students who are more or less the same, and any student, I think, has the similar kind of mental setup. So all of these people, if you consider them or categorize them, we can tell that they are in a group of we can call them as adolescents or young adults. See, there is a lot of, we all understand you're all learned people. You have done a lot of research, and have pursued a lot of things in your life academically, and you have a lot more experiences than perhaps I have. And we have our own understanding. Maybe I might talk a little bit on psychology more, and you can talk about your own respective field more. But I think the interests are not, we don't exclude ourselves from any other discipline. They're all interconnected. So I think everybody now talks about a lot about human behavior, psychology, and they use a lot of terms like anxiety, depression, and all that. So just I think by the time we fix this session, we we didn't know obviously, but a couple of days back we had the very disturbing event. I think mostly for the younger generation, that one of the upcoming fine actor has ended his life, committing suicide. So that has really raked up. I mean, I was basically almost spending whole till the midnight. We had a lot of discussions about, a lot of people asking about what happened, why, and all this, and mental health crisis. So suddenly there is a need to understand mental health. So whenever we have these kind of uh, news that or incidents that happen in the society in and around us, there is always this uh, uh, you know desperation, or there is always something that we like to fill our mind, that what could be the reason, and perhaps it is mental health problem. So but for me, I would like to now pitching my this conversation in two parts. Let us understand the what basically mental health, how do we understand mental health in our own lives, and mental health of young adults, and the possible challenges they may be facing, and what kind of parameters are important to be considered when we talk about mental health, and what can we do as maybe important, a significant stakeholder in their lives. So to begin with, when these kind of instances happen, something happens, somebody is having emotional disturbance, some student is having some issue. Generally, we've been dealing with this in and out. Our classroom environments, everything is always interactive. We have been interacting with several people, our colleagues, in all kinds of relationships at our homes, and in the work front, in the society, in our communities. So then, why do we see mental health as a very separate thing? Aren't we actually, trying? We are behaving and acting out as individuals and human beings, and all that is majorly playing is our mental energies. So we are using mental energies, and we have been dealing, we have been learning, we have been progressing, we have been creating, we have been working towards so many things in our life, and all that we are using is our energy, mental capacities. And as it is important that our physical health should be taken care, and mental health also should be taken care. So I think grossly we can divide ourselves as a physical and mental beings, and it should be an equally important thing. So it's not that something happens only then we think about what about our mental health, what about that person's mental health, somebody has some issue. So today's current crisis is purely seen from a physical point. It's a public health issue. It's COVID is a public health issue. It's a physical health a problem with that crisis. That okay, something is going to enter your body, and then there's some kind of an discomfort, and people, every person responds to it in a different way. For some people, it is very fatal, and for some people, it may not be. So we have been reading a lot of things about COVID. It's a part, one of the issues of public health is physical health. So equally important is our mental health too, isn't it? And when do we even start thinking about our mental health? Are we supposed to think about our mental health when something happens, or are we going to think about our mental health from the day we are aware about ourselves? So if you can see also, when this crisis came in, a lot of steps have been taken by the policymakers, governments, to ensure the public health, health as in public health, as in physical health only. But I don't think so. There is the similar kind of effort that has been put into consider even the mental health. But there is a lot of talk about it. There are a lot of webinars going on about mental health, what is going to happen, how each person is going to respond to this. And now the terms like quarantine, terms like isolation, terms like taking care of yourself, staying at home, stay safe, stay at home. These are the messages we have been hearing, and the lockdowns. And so you have to be in the house. And what are the other things that can crop up and disturb you? So every time this is seen as a problem, mental health is seen as a more as a problem than as a solution, or than as an effort to avoid a problem. So I would probably begin myself thinking that how do I take care of my mental health, my along with my physical health, so that I will not have end up into crisis again. So the crisis is the always the triggering thing. When a crisis comes, only as I was trying to put is we think about it, but why don't we think more about it every day? So it's an effort every day, as we all understand that we need to take care of our physical health, maybe having good diets. Now the lot of you should boost your immunity, eat that, do this, and so many suggestions have been coming, which is very very important to take care of our physical health. Likewise, what are we doing to take care of our mental health? So it applies to even the anybody, any person. So now so I would take you and two sections, that is all the teachers on the other side and the students on the other side. So we let us briefly understand how these youngsters we are dealing with, what kind of mental health status they bring in. So honestly speaking, how many of us had even an opportunity to always think about mental health from the time we have been interacting with others from the childhood? Did anybody specifically talk about it, specifically give us that information, help us to improve our understand ourselves and our mental health? I don't think so. It was very specific, but it was generally put in, like, okay, have a good meal, and you should eat this like vegetables or this and that, like that. Okay, you need to sit and or you need to play for some time, or you need to do this. So in these terms we have been hearing, but not in a specific conceptually we've been taught or we've been trained by our parents or in our schools. So even till now this hasn't been become a part of our process of developing learning environment. So I think it's time that though I belong to a department of psychology, I'm an academician. I teach about behavior, I teach about psychology, but I would still recommend that my college should have a unit where there is a facility that is being extended to all this faculty, students, everybody to who talks. There should be a psychologist in every education setting, school, college, any education setting, any work environment, organization, who is available for us, who gives us information, who gives us all of these beautiful information that is actually sitting. And a lot of research has gone in how to take care of yourself. So building mental health is more important, right? Once we build mental health, then we can actually minimize crisis. But when crisis hits, directly going and fighting with the crisis becomes like how they explain there is a blue and red cape kind of difference. If it's, are we going to build something like putting a blue cape, or are we going to fight against the mental health crisis? So these are two different things, and it can really take a lot of toll on a person. And I think when crisis happens, it becomes like a you need to it's you need to rescue people. So you may not actually focus on repairing or building. But then, is it an overnight thing? No, it is not an overnight thing. It has to happen during your developmental process as you grow up as a person. So now when we are talking about these young adults or these adolescents, what kind of mental health are they bringing to our classrooms? So they're all we've all been through that age. We know how volatile and vulnerable our minds are. Actually, I would say that in fact that is the most energetic phase in our life, where there was a lot of possibility to understand, a lot of possibility to explore, a lot of possibility to learn. So, and there's a lot of energy. So how is it being channelized? How is it being presented to us, and how are we understanding it, and how are we able to capture those moments and those interactions that they have with us, and understand how to extend help from our side? So there is an exchange that is happening between our students and teachers, and how are we utilizing that space? So when we creating that space, we should understand our space, where we are coming from, our state, mental health status. Likewise, we need to understand their status. We all understand about adolescent physical, psychological status. I don't want to really elaborate on that, because in this time I really don't want to elaborate on very issues that you can information that you can all refer to and get information on. But then yes, the adolescents generally are in the phase of development. They are emotionally, cognitively. I am a cognitive psychologist primarily, so I would really think about give importance more to the cognitive element, uh, which takes care of the emotional element also. Once your thoughts and thinking is streamlined, your emotions also will get streamlined. So this is being developed during this time for the adolescents. Now, how they have already come to our classrooms, they have already entered our education spaces. Like I said, how we have had a lack of that specific knowledge building about our own behavior and our own psychology. Even these students who have been coming in also did not have that kind of a formal training to behave, to understand, to develop psychologically, to develop their mental health. So they all come with, certainly with issues, right? How many of us would really confidently say that I don't have any issue psychologically? I am not bothered by anything, or I'm not, nothing bothers me much. I'm completely a stable, balanced person psychologically. I wouldn't even say that myself. So, which means that we had not made full effort to do that. We have each and every individual is supposed to do that. We should do that. That then only things can really make a lot of difference. But that is not is a situation right now. But right now, what we have is, we have these young minds, adolescents, bringing a state of mental being, which actually is coming and posing certain challenges to us. In addition to that, the this particular crisis, public health crisis, that is bothering people in terms of health and their physical health, and in terms of confining themselves to a particular place. Now, uh, we all know that it is very difficult to be in a place. I don't know how many agree, how many disagree to this. Is it very difficult to be in a place, in one particular place, without moving, or without really, I mean, with a lot of restrictions, with few people or no people around? Is very difficult. I think majority of us would say yes, it is going to be difficult after a point, at least. Maybe after few days I will be fine. After some time, it really gets difficult. Now, we are talking about these adolescents who have been extremely social. We all are like that. We all have been like that. We all are like that. So more so, these people, they had, so, and this happened like a sudden hit. It's a blow to everybody. So we didn't have time to prepare. We didn't have time to prepare for this kind of a crisis. So then, in this situation, suddenly people started to feel disturbed. Suddenly their mental health issues have emerged. Is it like that? Is the lockdown, or quarantining yourself, or isolating yourself, or restricting yourself without meeting people one on one, face to face, and socializing, lack of socialization, has this hit you and brought mental health crisis? Is a very big question. Or I have been already, vulnerable, or I have not been working on my mental health enough, that this actually added and brought it to uncovered my issues more vividly. So we need to understand that. So where the recent couple of days back, when Mr. Late actor, when he committed suicide, it was very, a lot of people try to talk about, people have a lot of problems, this is because of the industry, and so many, we have been hearing a lot of things, and this lockdown has caused him to end his life, because probably this could be one of the reasons. So, but how do we look at these things? Do we buy this narrative that lockdowns or making people confined can make them more vulnerable? We need to understand the connection. It is not that it is exclusively making person do that. So if you make somebody sit for some time, or put them in confinement for some time, are they going to immediately start feeling mental health issues? Or is it going to, somebody is going to drop into depression or feel very anxious and all that? It is relative. So there is a connection of that person behaving like that to the something before that, before confinement, how the person was. So, and the understanding and the level of awareness the person has. So this is exactly we are supposed to build, so that the individual gets prepared to deal all of these. So we have not been focusing enough. So this is a time, this is at least I always tell, I have been telling that it's a high time that we talk about all of this. It's a high time we talk. It's always been a high time for me, I think more than 2 decades. But yes, today also I'll say the same thing. It's high time that we talk about developing ourselves, our mental health, improving ourselves, working, building our communities into having good mental health. Okay, so it's a high time. So that's where we probably meet today to talk about it. So statistically, research evidence also always suggests that a lot of young minds have been now become vulnerable, and there any changes within or in the environment are triggering these underlying mental health issues that are there. So to be to for a psychologist to diagnose somebody having anxiety, to diagnose somebody having depression, it really takes a lot of assessment. And this is not something like, even for example, if you take any physical health problem like diabetes, one of the days when you have some kind of discomfort and all, you want to go and have a test, or you go to the doctor and they say maybe just get a you get your sugar levels tested, and then you see that you are on a borderline, or you actually have a problem. So then what do we understand? Did it come in a day or two when you started feeling discomfort? No, we all understand such chronic issues have had been there. So I have, probably for example, I had something like that, which means that I have been having this, it's been escalating for a period of time, maybe for years. And today it's come to a point where body has given me a signal to get a test done, and I got my assessment, and I know that today I have it. But it has been happening in my body. So as a human being, when we talk about a whole human being, anything, today I'm feeling very anxious, or today I'm having showing symptoms of depression or whatever, it has its own past. It's been happening. It's been the things have been getting added up in our everyday interactions or situations. So without understanding the causes, the environment, and context, focusing only on the consequences is very difficult. So when a person is referred to a mental health professional, okay, which we don't actually very well understand even today, that when somebody goes to a medical professional, a medical practitioner, and I want some, I'm having this problem, so they give you subscription. I say it's a very linear thing. I have these things, and they only look at the symptoms and give you a prescription, and then you are over it. Okay, so you, after 3 days you go. If it is subsiding, you don't go. Actually, sometimes we stop the medication too. But it doesn't happen like that. Mental issues are not as similar to the physical issues that we have. So but we apply the same logic. So I go to a psychologist, and that too with a lot of great difficulty. I don't actually feel going, because somewhere, as I have a little fever, I'm just okay, I'll take some home remedy. Likewise, if I'm feeling a little disturbed, I would probably see that how I'll divert myself. And so we feel that we can manage and cope with all these physical and mental things. But we don't understand till a point that there is a need to go and consult, like how you have to consult a medical practitioner. You can consult a psychology professional or a psychologist who can help you address these issues, who can give you some kind sense of direction, and put you through a process. But it cannot be as linear or minimum, with minimum interaction that we have with a medical practitioner. You have to go through, for example, somebody tells you, okay, you seem to have this issue. Looks like, if a psychologist tells me or any client that you have this, and you have to go through an year of therapy, we will, I'm sure that many of the people would feel that, why 1 year? I mean, why can't you just do it in one sitting or two sittings? And am I supposed to pay so much? So it is not about the time period, or it is about, that's a basic understanding. Here only there's a lot of um, ignorance, I would say. That no, this is the way it has escalated to you, has uh, was adding up in your life, which led to the current status or issue. To kind of remove all of those layers which have been causing problems will take time. It will take time. We don't have like medicine. It's not like a quick medicine that actually clears it off. So as it, how much time you have taken to build and come to this status, that much of time, or relatively some time, has to be given to uncover all of that, dismantle all of that, let you come out better as a better person in dealing with that. So I think this basic understanding has been lacking, and most of the time we always see that anything generally in our experiences, that any issues for adults and all is very common. Okay, they are adolescents, they're young people, they're always restless, they're always agitated, or so we think that they're all very normalizing all of these things. And I wouldn't say that it is that parents are responsible for understanding like that, or teachers, or any. All of us have our own learnings that have come from the past to understand adolescent, with not in a technical manner, but yes, now with a lot of research in psychology, yes, we understand, this is how actually adolescent mindset works, and these are the possible things that it can happen in their life, and these are the things that one has to do to address these issues. So when we talk about adolescents, which are probably in a span of 10 to 19 years, that is a period that is being technically considered, every 1 out of 6 persons have mental health issues, which means 1 person out of 6 is not able to handle at that point of time. It doesn't mean the other 5 people are not going to have. So it is relative. It is a relative thing. So it again goes back to certain other dimensions or other determinants, which has led that one person to, at that point of time, in that age, at 16 or 17 or 18 or 20, 25, to show that those symptoms or alerts that somebody is having a problem. So now, how do we even know that somebody is having a problem? What kind of issues that possibly they will face? So most of the commonly, as we in our experiences see that basically they go through a lot of anxiety. They also have been frequently diagnosed. Very unfortunately, nowadays, a lot of young people are also being diagnosed having depression, and some of them, all of these are linked to each other in some way or the other. Loneliness is something they're facing, and loneliness can be now directly linked to the COVID isolation period. Like now, the person who has a tendency to feel very lonely, and that is bothering, can straight away become extremely vulnerable and more vulnerable in this period. Really something to look into. So how do we now recognize that these people, the young adults are having these problems, and how do we know that something we need to address it at what point? So now this is not the duty of all of us fully. I would say we are not fully responsible to, as teachers or as parents or as friends, we're not fully responsible for it. But who would really help us to do that is somebody like professionals should help us to actually assess the mental health status. But what can we do then? What are we supposed to do? We are supposed to see, like parents, or some of you must be having adults and children, or as parents or teachers or friends, what is that we can do, or people who are caregivers of that particular young person, what we can possibly look into that can help a practitioner tomorrow finally to address. Or we needn't even go to the practitioner, but if we can see these things, we talk about it, or can we put them to somebody who can help them better than us. So generally we can look into their, everybody knows that this is sleep is something which is very important. Taking enough rest is very important. So if there are any unhealthy sleep patterns, now again it is very relative to the person, individuals. What is a healthy sleep pattern? Now most of us, we are all little from our old time, generally we have been used to that we sleep in the night, and then we are awake during the day doing all our activities. But however, you can see that a lot of children, adolescents, even sometimes adults, all of them now have, or some we have some habit of taking a nap in case we have time in the afternoons, but we working people may not get that opportunity. But generally our sleep is in the night, and it's supposed to be a good quality sleep, healthy sleep. But a lot of people have disturbances with that when we are sleeping during the night. And now when I tell about these younger generation, they like to sleep anytime when they feel like, right? So now then that also is one concept we need to get adjusted to understand. Basically, see, I would say adjustment is still very uncomfortable for anybody. I need to adjust is something which is not very, doesn't sound very comfortable. So it's not okay with me, but I'm adjusting with that, right? That is the feeling we have. No, you don't have to adjust. But if you understand, then you're like, I understand. That's why I'm okay with it. So we need to be okay with. Every person may have their own ways of resting. So rest is very important when we talk about sleep. So whether these people are having enough rest, uh, uh, and then moving on to the active part of the day, or the activity, and having enough. So whether this cycle, rest and active cycle, is fine with them or not, or are they showing lack of rest or restlessness and irritation and all that, and then you can know that they're not resting enough. Okay, so they're we know that what are the kind of um, engagements young adults are always nowadays are there, and we know, and it's also become very important that now we are only putting them onto the technology to sit on the classes and learn, and now which we never thought, but then now it is, they have to be with these mobile phones and all, so it can really disturb them, and maybe they may not be able to rest well. But one thing that we should can possibly look into is that healthy sleep patterns, and are they having any kind of showing inclination towards any physical exercises, active. I wouldn't specifically mean that every day somebody has to do this, but are they active, energetic, doing their things, or are they just sitting for a long time and not doing anything, and not taking care, and the physical energy is very less, and you're not getting time to see them active. So if you see, most of the time they are very inactive, we know what is going to happen. So physically also, body needs to expend the energy. We consume a lot of calories, and that needs to be also expended by the individual. So are they doing that or not, and are they showing it in terms of their talking, and in terms of their even their how agile they are and how active they are. They can even sit, and are they doing something like that or not? So you can see the swiftness in their actions, and see whether they're active, whether they're fit enough. uh, we don't have to push people that you need to be this and you need to have this weight. No, that is not what I mean by fitness. As I said, the high levels of energy is very important that they should have. And are they able to cope well? Are they able to respond to certain things appropriately or not? Here it is very important, and we know that in this age group the responses are very different, and sometimes they're very highly inappropriate also. And most of the times parents give these so many complaints. My son or my daughter are very rude, they are completely inattentive. They don't even give a minute to us when we talk to them. They're restless, or they're always out, they want to. So uh, this also indicates that anything happens also immediately there is a lot of anger, there's a lot of irritation, and they use a lot of words which can be very hurtful to the person who's listening. And a lot of things happen. So this indicates that they're not able to basically cope with the situations themselves and the other people well. So this is very important thing that we need to also recognize if it is happening. See, many times we also understand under the what we call as good parenting, and a lot of morals, values that we all try to teach and bring them, that okay, they have to listen to elders, or in this format still children try to be, they adhere to it, but sometimes they don't. So that's where we are very disturbed, what happened to them. But it is this issue, right? It is very important that we can't control somebody's responses all the time. Out of fear they may act, but is it consistently the same? Okay, is it consistently the same that I'm very nice, I'm very respectful in, maybe I'm actually scared of my father or whatever, I'm very I respect him in the house, but when I go to, I'm passing comments on an neighbor, uncle, or whatever, I'm being really rude to somebody, some elder person. So that is very inconsistent. So I'm not able to cope with my own emotions about a person and in the situation. So we need to look into that consistency of coping their emotions and interactions, interpersonal personal relationships. And we also need to look into the problem solving skills. How are they able to problem solve? Many times we all like people to be very effective problem solvers, that is, they can handle anything effectively well. But what happens is that the we before we solve the problem, there is somebody to offer the solution. There's always somebody who's actually giving them solutions. This, if not this, that, this always there is a checklist of solutions that has been given to them. And as protectors, caregivers, or parents, we are generally very enthusiastic and curious, and we are more proactive than our own children, to act on themselves and understand their problem and come up with a possible solution that they are comfortable with. We know that that is not going to be right one, but we're not even giving them the opportunity to even give a wrong solution for themselves. So what is that which is happening here is that we are actually not putting them through going a problem solving process. We are hindering that process. And when somebody is not able to experience the process, they will never know that there is a process like that, and they will never be able to problem solve effectively. So this is very important thing, that we need to see that they are solving, they're able to understand their issues, they're able to make an effort to solve it, they're talking. So all of this comes in this conversation. Like I'm actually conversing with you, and I know all of you are listening to me, and then you're also thinking, and I'm sure there's a lot of things to even interact and talk about. So, and their interpersonal skills, how their interpersonal skills are they? We know a lot of complaints which come, but I, as a psychologist or any person, individual, I always think that when we talk about interpersonal relationships, are we okay with the interpersonal relationships the way they are supposed to be? Are we having this scanner that, when somebody comes, namaste bolo, somebody comes, you wish them, or somebody to teach us or whatever, why this person is not, there's always that these required protocol in interaction. When we see it is not being there, we think that interpersonal skills are bad, they're rude, they're not even looking at us, they're not even attending to us. Why don't we see that that's how they are trying to communicate? Did we actually tell them nicely, or make them understand it helps them to learn more or know more, and this is a better way which they feel better when somebody interacts with them like that, and this is how they should do it to somebody else. So when things are not being contextualized, things are not being learned in a much more enhancing manner, it all becomes like again she like guidelines are which are thrown at us, and generally what happens is, let us all agree, for adolescents, for young adults are not the role models, right? Adults, especially the ones they know, are not the ones. They always look for somebody else. They're always looking for somebody who's doesn't even exist, maybe, probably. So they don't even know, and their peers or somebody who's not in reach for them to learn actually directly from them. So in that context, what is happening is that they are basically learning from somebody or something which may not actually give them right information. So then how do we make them attend to us? How do we make them understand that we are also there for you and help you? So this engagement and connection has to be built from the childhood, that yes, we are as important as anybody else in your life. As a mother, I'm very important to my child, like for that same child as the friend is important. So are we building that connection in a friendly manner is very, very important. So these are some of the issues that we can or the habits that we can see in terms of well-being of the adults. And if any issues are coming in these areas, we can know that there is a possibility that these youngsters can have issues, mental health issues, and especially in times of incongenial atmospheres like current COVID crisis. So crisis exclusively independently doesn't create any mental health issue, in fact, but the preconditions can definitely make somebody who are going through that will show these issues out very visibly. So this is something that I thought I will discuss, but then very briefly, let me see that let me share what are the different things that the adolescents will go through, which I think everybody understand. A very quick run on that. So we all know that the young adults like to be on their own. Why only adolescents? Young children want to be on their own. Actually, when the time they start walking, they want to be on their own. Actually, they've been waiting to start walking as a baby. You can see the kind of curiosity. I mean, the way they kind of, the first steps and the initial moment of excitement of the way they move itself is like, I want to be on my own. And enough of me lying on this bed for such a long time. I just want to be on my own. I want to be independent. So that sense of autonomy becomes much more higher and greater in adolescence, and we should understand that. I mean, we can't like, no, you are still like a kid. Watch you. I want you. You are not self. You can't. You're not reliable, self-reliable. I want to assist you. I want to help you. Is something that we need to somewhere keep in our own heart, and not visibly show them. Okay. So pressure, again, there is a lot of pressure to conform to their immediate surroundings, be it their peers, their friends, their classmates. So there's always that conformity. We understand that we want to be part of that. We agree to what everybody is doing. We agree to what everybody is saying. Chalo bhai, will go to some movie, then yes, they would like to go there to that movie. So there is always that they are, again, here, see, they're, this is like contrasting to the way they feel autonomous. They want to feel autonomous, right? They want to feel independent. But here, when it comes to peer groups, they're very dependent. Like, whatever you say or I, then we'll follow that. We will following. So there is this contrasting kind of thing that is happening in this age group, and there is we know that it's very important that as adults now, as we are talking, we need to really accept and admit that there's a lot of violence towards these children and adolescents. Anybody, more so to these people, because now we need to understand about their violent experiences or abusive experiences than adults, because as adults we supposed to know that and we're supposed to handle it, but which is also not a right theory. But definitely as a child or an adolescent, when they go through any kind of discomforts, abuse, exploitation, we have to what we call as advocate for them. We need to understand and advocate for them. So that is very important. So we definitely need to play a rescuer role. So there is a lot of exploitation to these to many of the young people. As you can see, it can be the smallest thing to the most horrendous thing that they can experience. You all know about all of these every day. We read newspapers every day. We talk about it, and we know when our students come and express, and we can sometimes we're so scared that, oh my god, this child or this student is living in such a horrible situation and environment. And at the same time, there is a lot of exploration about their own sexual identities. Um, it is very important that we should understand the sexuality of any human being is not in absolute binary. It's not like male female. It doesn't exist like in absolute binary. Now that everybody understands, even conventionally, when our discipline also has emerged, we also used to think that it is this binary male and female, but it has changed. So what has happened is, now that was very strict binary that they were supposed to adhere to. Anything in between was not considered. We know a lot of uh, uh, ridicule that we have done. We have heckled people on this issue. But this is something which is very important. Nowadays, a lot of young people are coming out as, identifying them as not two primary binaries like this. They're showing different kinds of preferences and orientations. So we need to understand that there is these at these ages. I mean, even before adolescence starts, also the exploration about their sexual identity has begun. Now, this was not something which we ever talked about as when we were young. I don't think so. This kind of a discussion even happens so openly even now. But we have to understand that, so it exists, but we're not talking about doesn't mean that doesn't exist. So this identity, sexual identity or identity about oneself is happening. Now somebody has been asking me a lot of questions like what about their aggressive behavior and all of that. See, now these are all the consequences that we are seeing in a young adult, but what are the causes? What is that they're going through? Also we need to, are we, do how many of the parents actually comfortably sit and talk to the children uh, about all of these issues? I saw an advertisement just a few days back, which New Zealand has released, where there are a couple of porn stars who visit the house. It's just an advertisement, and then they say that your child is watching us on mobile phone and all this, and the mother is looking, and then she's thinking in herself, and they call the child, and the child is like shocked. So the mother is thinking in her head, okay, fine, now this is the time that I need to talk to my child. So what is it happening? So the information, basically the aim of the advertisement is that what is being received online, everything is not fact. Okay, so who is supposed to filter that and make sense is immediately the parents, whoever are their caregivers or teacher, whatever it is. So this is very important. So are we doing that or not? So then only then, without understanding, we'll say that okay, this is the reaction, or this is the emotional response, or this is how they're behaving. Is coming from probably that we have not established those kind of conversational styles with our children. I wouldn't say, I know that we all make a lot of effort to have a very good interaction with our children. We make a lot of effort to connect with them. We make a lot of effort to basically make them actually more comfortable than they really need, right? But so what happens is eventually it is placing a lot of expectations from the the other part, the young person, that they are supposed to be nice to us because we are being so nice to them. We are providing so much, and so they are supposed to. But is it a absolute response that we can expect? Then if they're not doing, what is making it, why they are responding is something which we are supposed to understand and talk about more frequently. And this is not a one day thing. No, as an adolescent, till now my child was very nice. He was listening to me. One mother was very, till now my child was so good till last year, and suddenly there is a change. Yes, there will be a lot of changes, but did we as a parent also age like our child? Or are we only operating from our mental age with the child, or are we also traveling along with them as they are aging? As an adolescent, how my child is going to think and how they are going to see things, am I seeing the way, am I making an effort or not? We have a luxury to do that because we have been through that, but our experiences would have been different. But today's environments and contexts are changing. But are we then understanding that and then reorienting ourselves to behave, or at least perceive like my adolescent child or my student? Are we doing that? We are supposed to ask these questions. I think it won't become very difficult once we also become a little bit more flexible in understanding all of these people, because it's important. Otherwise there is no dialogue, there is no connection, we will lose everything. And at least with adults we lose also, they'll take care of their themselves is what we assume. But now see, the actor is 34 years old, he's still, we can consider him as a middle, already passed through adolescence. But how the person was not able to deal, it also shows that at every age, at every stage, we all need somebody to uh, relate to what we're feeling, and be with us and help us to understand things better. Then other thing is, like, we know that, as I already touched on, the lot of increased usage of technology and all of that. But there are always, we know that there's positive side of it, negative side of it. But what is more important is that what is that these young adults are exposed to, and where is that they can make more use of it, is something which we also constantly have to keep telling them. What is a young adult supposed to watch on a mobile phone, on an internet, or on their laptop? What is it they're supposed to be viewing? We have our own things, okay, we say that this, they're supposed to only attend classes, they're not supposed to see anything, or they're supposed to only use those sites which help them to do some project or these things. Yes, but it is our expectation, our guideline, it is our curriculum. No, they're supposed to do this, so that's what they are supposed to do. But what about their mind? What is that they want to also want to know more? As being an adolescent, you can ask them, they can, or we can give them that kind of benefit of doubt, that let them do what they can and they can explore, and then talk about it. So if we don't give that space, or if you always want to only open what you want to open and close what you don't want them to see, then it is going to be like they're always wander around to get all of this. And this is what happened. We can't obviously control, like how we are not able to now contain the spread of virus. So this is something which is going to bound to happen even with the minds. So that is the nature of the mind, right? So we have to now understand and be with them. So the more patient we're going to be with them, I think we will be able to successfully see what we can do. I think there is a last point about adolescent nature that I would like to say is that they always have some kind of an expected reality that they're living, and this is what it is. I'm going to be, I have to become this, I have to do this, I want to aspire to become so and so, with versus the how they perceive about other things. So for example, I mean, the reality that they have is that based on their all socio cultural economic conditions, they cannot think beyond this, but they always have their imagination so high that they aspire so high, or something which is completely not going to happen, and they want to stick on to that. Somewhere they want to kind of feel comfortable, some that autonomy they want, no? So they would like to always, you say that you become something, they will say that no, I want to become something else, or think about something else, or I'm not even thinking about it. Or they just keep putting words, whatever you feel like to listen. They know, no, they have been watching us for a long time, so they know what parents will expect from to do. So okay, my father or attempt civil services, and I always used to say yes, I'll definitely do that, I'll try, I'll give up my this thing. But then very slowly when I started to learn about psychology, then I decided I'll only pursue this and not attempt civil services. So he was a little disappointed. Then we had a conversation. He said, why don't you try? I said, it's nothing that I don't want to try, but it is something which here I want to focus more on learning something. So somewhere we were able to understand what I was basically preferring. So maybe this will not be a very nice option for somebody else. Like, some other person can think that if a parent want or teachers advise a person to do this, they may completely do something else, which is not even, I want to become something else, which is completely unrealistic. So this kind of incongruency can exist in adolescence. But very important thing that all of us, my dear colleagues, we should understand is that, are these young people having enough awareness and knowledge even to decide what to do? Do they understand that this is what I want to be like, whatever they're saying? Do they have enough information, even with what you're proposing, and even with what they're trying to perceive to for themselves? Are they having that realistic picture or ability to imagine and understand how it is going to be? This is something that also needs to be equally built when we're talking even about career and career counseling and their aspirations. So these are all very, very important dimension aspects that we are supposed to be working on exclusively. But I don't think so we are doing that explicitly with our students or adolescents. Now what do we do? Like, what can we basically do as educators or as teachers or even as parents or a part of their life? Is that I just put on few points, like we can give a lot of encouragement to them, to in terms of what is that they would like to do, and in terms of their aspirations, what is that they're dreaming and thinking about. But this needs to be built for over a period of time. But we know that, for example, you're an undergraduate teacher. By the time the child is entering into your class, they already had interaction, they already have passed in their age for they're with somebody else. Now you are a teacher who's going to only deal looking from as a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old, isn't it? We don't know how they have been till in their previous years of development, so we have no idea about it. So we don't do those kind of a screening. But then I think that is also very important to have a quick status profile of each student. What is that they have been doing so far? What are their strengths? What are their likes, dislikes? the little mental psychological profile of them would do, which actually would be a better job for a psychologist of a particular institution. So for example, a child is going to an intermediate or a graduation from one college to another college. So that college should send them even with a profile, confidential report, and that can, in a very general way, that okay, this person has all of these things, so that even if it can be taken forward, and one, we can as teachers and all also can have a little bit awareness about it, and we know what kind of mental makeup our students are coming up with. I don't know, this is something which possibility we can think about, because it's very difficult at how they were the past, and each student, all nitty-gritties we will not be able to know. We always go by assumption, these are this is the group, and this is what what is that I'm supposed to deliver as a teacher, and what is that they're supposed to learn, and this is what we always been, this is the learning environment we are trained to be live in. But yes, we need to also step a little bit outside and see these possibilities, because that's what is basically going to disturb our interaction with the student in a classroom. So we need to encourage them to communicate and talk more. Yes, and then there is I'll complete and get back to your questions. So I'll just quickly tell in a minute other things, like positivity is another second thing that I thought we should also focus on. Keeping things positive means it's like, always not telling nice things. It is about making them feel good about what is that they are liking to do, pleasant things that they can possibly opt to do. So that is something which is very important, that we should keep showing them, and that also reflects from the positivity you have in your own life as a teacher or as a caregiver. And practice is a third one. So make them practice certain things. Now, for example, sitting at home and not able to go out during this period, lockdown period, is something we're supposed to practice. What happened, for example, I think all of us have started to go back to our workplaces. I have observed that, people are having a real tough time to wear mask and come. And people are having real tough time to maintain that minimum physical distance, even wearing mask. I think by now, as I've been counting the days, it's been almost like 92 days that we have been not going. I mean, at least more than 80 days we have been under different phases of lockdown, and we haven't been meeting many people at all. So we were confined, and then we had enough information by now, right? But then what happened? What happened to that information? How did we translate into our minds that tomorrow when I go out, what am I expected to do? How am I supposed to meet my colleagues, meet my students? Students haven't come yet, so meet my colleagues, do my regular work. I don't think so. We really planned so well. People have been having a lot of difficulties. They're coming very close. They're not wearing masks. It's so important to wear a mask properly. Otherwise, don't wear it. That is my advice. But we don't understand. You can't touch a mask. You can't be always, a mask cannot be slipping down your nose, which can be more dangerous. You'll be inhaling anything that is already on the surface. So these are things that we haven't practiced. Then how do we practice? Now it's getting very difficult, but that little exposure can be again very dangerous thing, right? We can't, many people tell, no, we'll take time to adjust, we'll take time to learn this, but sometimes I don't think so. Things outside are so kind enough to give us so much time, right? It doesn't give time. We have to immediately be so if as adults, if we are able to do that or not is a one big evaluative question that we can put to ourselves. How do we expect adolescents to be like? I saw a lot of young ones going on triple riding on the bikes, and then again the same, they like not to be autonomous and free, that has come in, and the same old style is. So there's always, all of us want to come back to the same old regular life, which we actually are comfortable with, but somewhere we have failed to understand. I suppose that's a different topic altogether, but this is the same thing, practicing certain kind of things, maintaining physical distance, not actually shaking hands, all of that. This is a COVID environment, but otherwise also anything that we are would like to practice, they say, what you think every time is you going to put into practice. So if I don't think about it, I will not put it into practice. I have to be very conscious about everything that I'm doing. So when I'm going out, I actually think about what is it I'm possibly going to do, and I tune myself in such a way that I'm doing those things. I'm really ensuring, even if I'm engaging in multiple tasks, I'm very conscious about important things. That I'm going to wear my mask, I'm not going to touch here, I'm going to really take care or wash my hands or whatever. Every time I'm very conscious about it. I'm practicing it. I'm also practicing it, right? So like all the things that we do, everything, not only COVID time and all, even before that, even after that, all our life, what we're going to practice is going to, we're going to become perfect. That's an old saying, but it definitely means a lot. For me, every concept, every word is a concept. We know in English, you're all English, every word is a concept, every noun is a concept, and every concept is derived from an experience. It means something. Are we at it? Are we understanding it? What is our level of understanding about the concepts, and how they're related to so many other things is a very important learning and refinement that we as adults are supposed to have embarked on. And the same thing, if we teach the younger people, they will, I'm sure, will really appreciate that. And the fourth thing is the knowledge again. Knowledge and information is the same thing. What kind of, we now know what kind of information, how that information is presented. A lot of articles have come in couple of days, that how the news of somebody ending their lives has come, like right, left, center. And that actually sparks a lot of emotional things, and a lot of blame games happen. And you know, there is also, even in our own psychology fraternity, some people, we are all, even I myself, including myself, not very comfortable with the kind of terminology they're using about all of these. So we don't appreciate, that's not how we talk about. See, we're all human beings, we all go through so many things, but talking in a very decent way is very important, and that we are supposed to learn, and that is the information and knowledge we're supposed to have. That's how we gain wisdom and perspective, right? And maintain a balance, finally maintain a balance of all of the things that are happening. And I would say that, we should never judge people behave in a particular way, and we should not judge people if they didn't, or always keep thinking. All of us somehow, invariably, especially who are parents, expect all children to be actually extraordinary, right? That is something which is not going to happen. In fact, for me, I want just my child to be uh, comfortable and normal. I mean, just be themselves, whatever it is, and they're able to enjoy and learn what they're able to do. But our systems have somewhere, even we have been through the same molds, and we also expect the same thing. We can expect, but provided if we are going to create all those facilitating conditions to become something like that. One of my cousin's husband was asking me, how do I make my child, uh, you know, uh, gifted child? Like, I want my daughter to be a gifted daughter, I mean, extraordinarily intelligent. I said, just, spend good time with the child, understand your child, do whatever the child requires, create all the environments, and just see what happens. That's it. You can't actually change and put in things and, rewire people like that. So we always know the possibilities are there that somebody can really be very intelligent, and somebody who has all of these abilities may not actually be very wise enough. So this all again goes to the ecology or the environments that we are all brought in, and we need to review that. We can't ignore that fact at all. So the emotional component is also very important to balance, very, very important to balance, which is I would actually tell you something at the end, but yeah, emotional regulation, emotional maturity is something, is a very big problem. I think a lot of you have this problem with your young people, that they're emotionally not very, we can't expect them to be like that unless until we have been working on that. Okay, but you as a teacher or you as a parent have your own limitations. After a child moves off from your ambit vision, they have been interacting and they've been seeing a lot, and sometimes there are a lot of ways that they learn emotions, they learn things. We know that, there can be, they learn how to be angry, they learn how to be saying things and all that, or they learn how to laugh sometimes also. So they change a lot, children. So we need to understand that it's not that you are the one who is supposed to be teaching everything. Don't take first that responsibility. There is a very beautiful concept that has emerged now of late, even in child psychology and development psychology, which we call as conscious parenting, positive parenting. So even as a parent, we are supposed to learn that. I always thought, I always knew, and I always promoted that you want to take any role and responsibility. Now, how you want to have become teacher or a lecturer, you have been trained to become like that. I really promote this idea that you also have to make effort to become a conscious parent and a positive parent. And if you there is a know how to be that, it's good to learn. I would suggest and recommend this for everybody who are current parents and want to be future parents. And same thing applies to the teacher. Now teacher's role becomes much more lesser. Teacher is okay, not leaving the teachers who spend a lot of time in the schools, but teachers like us who have limited time duration with our young people who are come for join only for 3 years or 4 years or minimum 2 years in the post grad. We can't actually then be with that particular individual for a long time, and we can't actually do a lot of things with them. So already they have passed off their time with previous caregivers or educators. So that is their prerogative. So we don't have to become very anxious about it. But yes, some kind of a little background about them will always help. For that also, we need some assistance. Maybe a school or college should have a psychologist, or at least we can have our own group of faculty members who are more inclined, or we have those abilities and skills to engage with the students. And I think you all have these student engagement committees and people who interact and coordinate activities, and they can also give us some kind of profiles about the students, and we can help. So one thing is young people energy, as I said, that needs to be diverted. That needs to be channeled. That needs to be put in different activities. And you know what, this loneliness is one of the component I was mentioning, will only come when an individual has never learned to engage themselves. You understand? So for example, I in my life never felt bored. Even in all this lockdown, there was never a time I felt bored, because I knew that I can engage myself. I can do something as long as I'm in my consciousness, not sleeping. I know what I can do and what I'm supposed to do, or what I don't want to do. Or for me, even sitting and thinking about something is also an engagement. So are we as individuals encouraging that? So being with themselves, thinking, critical thinking is so important. We need to, if we can work on critical thinking abilities, reasoning abilities, and rational thinking abilities in these children from the beginning, by the time they come to adolescence, they'll actually really become really bright minds. They'll explore, they will do a lot of things, they can really produce great stuff. You don't have a monitor also that they can come to that stage. But I think we have so many limitations in terms of, we're all actually governed by so many other external factors, honestly, that we don't have time to attend to our people, students, or fully, isn't it? Even curriculum, and disseminating our own knowledge in curriculum itself is not fully uh, important for that particular young man at that point of time. But we assume that is all important, is going to give them something in the future. But there is always something else also that is missing, and we can't actually take care of all those other areas. So but when we're not able to take care of those areas, then we can't get too disturbed about the effects of not able to take over those areas. Only that we can understand and do our maximum, our own optimum levels we can function as. And we are also again human beings having our own different prerogatives in our life, trying to attend to a lot of things. Our own families, our own issues also all are there, which actually play a big role. So there is a limitation, there is a context that we can only operate as educators and teachers and caregivers or providers or parents. So within that, how much we can do is one thing, and before that also how much we can do from the beginning is another thing. So these two conversations have to meet very, very friendly manner. They have to meet each other. They have to help this individual to grow and develop. We need to give that enough time and space for an individual to develop, and then we can see what happens. In fact, I am a member of the Australian Educational Society in Australia, and I have seen, and I have seen wonderful works in their schools and institutes that they have incorporated the building positive environments in their schools, and how well um, it is away from the curriculum. So, and how they integrated also that into curriculum, and what kind of impact that they have made on the children were all big research studies that are happening. So I know how it can really make a lot of difference, and I know there are a lot of even education institutions in India now today. They're promoting, for instance, even in Delhi, happiness curriculum in this government schools has been introduced. But again, see, we always have our own limitations, except for these bigger corporate schools and international schools. They engage, they incorporate some of these elements, but we mostly are into our own regular um, molds of disseminating our own duties in an educational system. And now I think all of us are very, very curious to, or actually, I would say a little bit worried also, how do we move about, what to do, and how to reach to our students. So these are all general challenges that I have been talking about in the context of that affects mental health and that may not affect mental health. But there are many more challenges that today we are at this point of time also facing. For example, even I'm also part of the same thing, addressing the same thing. Like, a lot of our students don't have access to internet. A lot of our students do not come from those kind of families, and they don't have that luxuries to basically receive what we're trying to give. So what do we do in that context? And already they're distracted, they're already diverted, they're already having mental health problems. I know, like, I get several desperate requests and these things, and sometimes it's very, very disturbing how, what kind of things that they're going through. So in that context, what can we do in addition is also something which we need to now start thinking and incorporating. If we don't do that, it's very difficult to then address at once. We can't do that without making it a part of our work, isn't it, or part of our educational structure. We can't just do it on our own. We can't take the responsibility fully. These are all very important structures that have to be built. I would be really happy that mental health department and mental health task force to be brought in, at least in this crisis in our country, and they address all of these in all different settings: work, households, education institutions, hospitals. In fact, in March, second week of March, I proposed to the government health department that in very few days there will be big crisis, the mental health crisis, even for the frontline workers. Please start thinking about it, because I worked with the international organization on counseling and supervision with mental health on HIV virus. So I'm very, very sure that all of this is going to happen, and now we are seeing that. We are in June. I already told them in the month of March itself. But yeah, we take things sometimes a little slow. Maybe, yeah, it doesn't matter as long as it is going in the positive direction. It is directional. I'm very happy when it is directional, even if it is slow. So we are also in the same phase, I think, to go ahead in educational setting to bring in all these improvements. And I hope we'll all be more sensitive about it. Yeah, I think I have taken a long time, more time than I'm supposed to, more than an hour, more than 1 hour to 20 minutes. If you have anything to ask, I'm open. I can spend more time also if you wish to stay on. It depends on the organizers.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anupama. It was actually a fantastic session. Before I actually hand it over to my colleague Srilata for questionnaire session, I would like to ask you a few questions, because we ourselves are teachers and a bit confused in our own classrooms as to how to identify our students' mental weaknesses. You actually told that loneliness is something which we have to identify. But then, see, loneliness, is it a self-imposed one, or is it something which is naturally there in a student? Do they really opt for it? Because, see, why I'm posing this question is, if it is self-imposed, come what may, in spite of the crowd around them or any number of students around them, they still prefer to be silent, lonely. So is this self-imposed or is it naturally, is it genetic?
Well, I wouldn't say it is like genetic and all, unless until there are certain kind of preconditions. For example, loneliness is also evident in people who are suffering from severe depression, which can be again linked to genetic factors. Even their parents or in the family, it is they have inherited it. So that can be one of the way. But then I would say that loneliness is something now a lot of students are actually displaying. But loneliness can be something which has built from the, as I said, from some time. What has made them to cut off from others, and why are they not able to relate or engage with anybody, even you making a lot of efforts, is something which we need to really understand from their psychological profile. Like I said, we need to
Yeah.
understand the psychological profile, madam. It is very important that we need to have psychological profiles of the each and every young person who is entering into education institution. Because for example, there can be people who are introverts. They are generally, we have heard about these words, right? Okay, somebody who's always to be themselves, they're not very interactive, they don't like to be very social. Is it
True.
okay or it's not okay? It is completely fine to be not to be social. So we are also actually looking from the lens that every person has to interact, they have to respond. They don't have to actually. That is also one way of responding, but we should understand that there is a possibility that people can do this way, be this way or that way. So there is a personality type. It's a personality typology, like being introverted or extroverted or ambiverted. So again, it all can be coming from their earlier years, earlier experiences.
Okay.
So how they have built, even in the house also, even in their own environments, a lot of factors of trust building has to happen. A lot of factors, what kind of experiences they have, whether they were positive or negative. So they would have said something, for example, and in the past, and somebody who were there with them haven't responded well, or they would have heckled them. So they now actually stop even interacting, right? And that comes as a being very lonely. And some people are lonely, they show that they're lonely, but they're not lonely. Their mind is very active, they're engaging in something in their head. Sometimes even one child, once I was like, they were sitting and then they were just just looking at for a long time. I said, what are you doing? I'm thinking. So I said, like, I'm very happy that you're thinking, they're active in their mind. So we need to be very, very cautious to notice that are they kind of not doing anything, completely mentally numbed and not being active at all for a long time, and not being present in the real environment. See, I can be lost in my thoughts or whatever, and appear to be lonely, but I may respond to you when you actually ask me, or once in a while also, but that also is a good thing. And sometimes, as I said, depending on how, from where they come, from what kind of environments they're coming, what experiences they had from the childhood, in our classroom, they may present the same thing. So they are aloof, they are not mingling, they're not being friendly. So we are like, why are this child cutting off and being lonely? And you want to make a lot of effort, but actually, we entering into their life is a little more late. To be very honest, we haven't not entered as an undergrad teacher much earlier.
Correct.
You understand? So I think probably a primary school teacher is much early to enter into their lives than an undergrad teacher. So we shouldn't be really getting bothered or concerned so much, but maybe we can work out. And then also we need to begin questioning whether is it really a problem in the first place. Okay, so that is very important.
Yeah. Now I request my colleague Srilata to sum up all those questions that she has noted till now. Srilata, can you?
Yeah, ma'am. Some participants are asking if people are interested in activities than studies, how to make them focus. Maybe they are talking about people at kindergarten level.
Yeah. See, that is the nature of a child to be doing some activity. Now, when we begin to think that the child is not engaged in learning something, like the way we are thinking that they're supposed to study something, when we project study not being an activity, then we are finding it a problem. So we all know now that a lot of change has come in terms of how education is made very interactive, and a lot of, as I said, being part of that association also, I've seen when education or knowledge, whatever you want to give at that point of time to the child, when it is actually presented to them in an activity manner, in an activity, in the form of an activity, you actually can see very quickly students switching to that. Okay, so when you make, we do not make it as an activity, when we do not make an activity that interests a child, the child possibly will opt for something which is interesting them, right? So even in positive psychology, we see this love, play, engagement. These are all the things that we always want them to be focusing on, but they aren't focusing on every aspect that needs to be introduced to the child in that way. So engaging a child, even when you want to teach them something, needs to be put in an activity that they are comfortable and they can, in the schools of Finland, if you really go and look into their University of Helsinki and all that, actually the child is in the school only for 2 to 3 hours, at the max 4 hours, and they're actually playing only. They're not sitting like in the classrooms and reading something or writing something. So that's how they actually introduce education to them, and that's a very, very nice way to. And then they really show wonderful critical thinking skills when done like that.
Yeah, ma'am. There's another participant who's asking, perception about relations and people around are different at different ages. With online academics, the interaction is more within gadgets than people. Will there be a difference in their behavior?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. We have those fields called as child-computer interaction, human-computer interaction, where for a long time we have been thinking that a gadget is, and the nature of gadgets also have changed, right? They have become more interactive. For example, how do you and I feel when we are talking like this? Are we feeling comfortable? Is it as good as sitting in front of each other and talking to each other? Are we really feeling that or not is very important. So how are we even seeing this interaction is very important, the human-computer interaction. As long as it is coming to almost coming close to a real-time interaction, then there shouldn't be a problem for us, right? When it is not coming to a real-time interaction, then there is a problem. So we have to, so what kind of content is, when we're talking about online teaching, when we're talking about children being engaged with these technologies and gadgets, how interactive it is, how engaging it is for the student is very important to determine. Anything that is beyond that is something which we can think that it's going to be a problem, and child is not going to have those real-time experiences and losing out on the social. So actually for me it is very social. Honestly speaking, nothing changed in my life. Even the lockdown period, I have been interacting with my students. Very fortunately they have internet and they are privileged to have this. So even if some couple of them didn't have, I've been on the mobile phone, I'm talking. So the engagement with a person, even if you're, so this is actually a restriction or a limitation in the current context, which may not be obviously, let us all wish that it will go away, but there is always a possibility that we'll always meet on one-on-one. So they say, no, you're not, they've been telling, I think we are listening, you're physically distant, but emotionally you're still connected. So how do we make connections very important. So gadgets all are utilized only to enhance this. If we think and we promote the same idea and we see that it's happening with our students, and I don't think so that we should worry about it. So what is going to be more worried, some should be actually explored and understood. And constantly, being with a person is very important, and making people interact more. See, calls, I mean, my mother, who's very elderly person at home now, she is engaging herself only by through calls, and I'm telling, okay, you make video calls, and so the feeling, the experience is not lost. So for us, the overall experience should be a component that we need to assess. Even if technology online in all modes are there, these are all not going to replace obviously our human one-to-one interactions, and how they can enhance is something which we should put into the young minds. Okay, at the end of the day, tell them that they can't get away from meeting you as a teacher.
Yeah. There's another participant from my college. She says, I want to know how students must deal with the uncertainty of their exams, placements, progress in academia in the present context. How should they cope with this dilemma? I have seen my students in stress these days.
Yes, yes, a very, very important question that even we also have, and I have a lot of students
Yeah.
messaging me about it. What happens finally is a lot. One thing that if as teachers, if we have been engaging with our students, we are supposed to impress on them that this is something is going to be. Uh, going to happen, which is always been happening. A course is going to come to an end, some assessment is going to happen, they will definitely come out successfully out of this course. What is more important, these are certain things which are not even in our hands. We are all waiting for certain kind of directions and policy instructions from the higher ups. So in fact, thinking about something which is not in our control basically is very important for everybody. If we're going to sit and think about what is not in our control, we are actually wasting time. What we are apparently supposed to do, even if even not in this context, what are we supposed to do? We have been doing all these years is that we've been teaching and completing our syllabus and making our student learn as much as they're supposed to learn. That is the deal here. If we are not, if we are going to step up from that and worry about other things, so in the if before this, okay, we would finish our syllabus, everything comes to an end, and then there will be notification which is sent to us by some external thing. Not, we are not going giving exam date. It comes in and they see students go right and come back. So the same thing is going to happen, but it is going to take time because it's a little bit a different challenging situation. But that is going to happen. Uh, Whether they're going to go and write exam and pass out the exam, or they're going to have the similar kind of thing that happened to the 10th class students, or what is online, some assessment is going to happen. And all of us, including our students, have been through this. You learn and you'll be assessed, right? So whether how that assessment is going to be is something which we shouldn't be bothered about. What the students are supposed to be focusing on, what they are supposed to learn. All my I mean, some of my students, whenever I actually talked about it even before the lockdown started, every time I speak to them about all of that, what you and I today meeting here in the classroom are supposed to be bothered about is what I know. I'm supposed to tell you, I'm supposed to share, you're supposed to learn. That only we're going to focus on. All other things, don't, you know, ask, worry about all of that. We are here to take care of all of that. We will be as and when in directions come, we will do, but don't worry. So what I am supposed to do in my capacity, I'm going to do. As in your capacity as a student, what is it you're supposed to bother about? Like another point about uncertainties, one few seconds on that. Yes, uncertainties have always existed. A lot of students who have been passing out of the courses are not able to place themselves uh, effectively well in a lot of things in the market. So then that becomes a different external, realm where we can't actually think about or talk about unless until we are having certain kind of linkages and preferences. For example, my students, I have now put them into, even before they're passing, but I put them on some kind of jobs where they can get some interview calls, so tele counseling or whatever. So it's if you are if you are running courses and you are teacher of the courses of professional courses, then you do have certain directions to be shown. But then everything is going to depend on how, what is going to happen. The situation, I think the understanding the situation is very important while being in the situation. When are we supposed to understand the situation? Not before that we wouldn't know, after that it will be too late. I think this journey also we need to make them go through that. This is a situation where which can call for, let us assume that it is better for that can give us some alternative ways of working. Just imagine we have to sit and work at home like this. Will it change much? Maybe a little bit more structural, or certain things can be changed. And sometimes people also think that it's more better, or sometimes they think, no, it can be boring. But whatever it is, this can be one of the condition. Then what are we going to do? Are we going to say we're not going to work like that in that situation? No, we will have to work. We will work. So understanding these things are very important. As teachers, we have to bring that awareness. We cannot bring certain things which we are not even very sure about, because we know that we are in everybody, anybody who is in any country knows what is happening in their country. We are not in New Zealand, or we are not in any other place where we see that they're much ahead of us. So we are still in a country which is developing. We have our own hiccups and issues, and we will, I think we'll all overcome once. All that only takes is understanding and being with it and adjusting, even if it is not comfortable.
Srilata,
That we should tell to the students.
yeah, Srilata, there is one question Madhavilata has posed. Can you read that, please? Srilata? Madam, I would like to read
Yeah.
that.
Yes, please, ma'am. Go ahead.
So she was actually telling, see, as parents, we see that our children have this disturbed sleep pattern. How to regulate it?
Yes, it's very important. I already pointed to that if they're not having healthy sleep patterns, we need to address that very immediately, because that's also one of the indication that something is disturbing them.
Yeah.
So then we need to also understand what is healthy sleep pattern according to them and according to you. Like I said, if they're not feeling that they're rested and they're not coming back to their being active after resting, then we need to say they're still very sober, or they're not actually sleeping for a long time and awake, or on the mobile phones, or watching something Netflix or whatever, or not able to sleep. They're having very vivid dreams nowadays. Now in this period also, there's a lot of analysis on the dreams, the kind of recurrent dreams we're all having. So all that is showing that there's a lot of uncertainty in our head. There is a lot of anxiety about what is going to happen. There is a fear of some unknown damage that we are going to have that is coming. Like sometimes suddenly there are people who are telling that we are having fearful animals attacking us. It is nothing but like that is underlying causes. Like we know that we can be exposed to a virus anytime, isn't it? So that there is an underlying thing like that. So dreams can come. So then they get disturbed and they can wake up, or they're not able. So there's something. See, why when the person doesn't rest well is when there is something that is eating them or bothering them or they're thinking about. So even if they're engaging, like I said, so a lot of critical thinkers actually don't sleep more. They sleep very less, but they're very active after that. They rest for some time and they're very active after that. So we need to understand after sleep how they're behaving. Okay. Are they still feeling very sleepy? They're sobering down. They're not able to do anything. Their hygiene levels have gone down. They're not like but we can't actually. That's what I'm saying. They should sleep for 8 hours. They should sleep only in the night. They should every day bathe and clean themselves. They should do this, and these certain things now cannot be imposed on students or children, especially during this. We can just leave them, but we can have a track of that. Is it getting too worse? It is getting too bad. Like they're like not caring everything about at all. And the reckless behavior or irresponsibility is creeping in, then we need to take a call on that. Otherwise we can leave. Everybody feels sometimes like that. Okay, we are at home, doesn't matter. Even a lot of webinars, we see a lot of people are very casual, relaxing at home and sitting. That this is a very natural. This is an environment that calls for that. Doesn't matter. We accept that, but till what time we'll accept is very important call that a parent should take at homes. Yes. But sleep is something, madam, I would definitely want everybody to observe their children's sleep. If they consistently observe there is really something very annoying, please seek some counseling advice. Nothing
true.
Yeah.
Very true. Yes, Srilata, can you please continue?
Yeah, madam, there's one last question. Some people have asked about suicidal tendencies. I think to sum up, I have written one question for myself. I think all these questions can be addressed by this. Do you feel adjustmental nature should be taught or practiced from childhood or schooling?
Madam, actually, this is a very nice question. Adjustment, when we talk about adjustment in psychology, it is a very important concept. But generally, what you are telling me, generally the way it is layman connotation of adjustment is, even if it is not very comfortable or it is less comfortable, also we try to compromise and adjust. These are they go synonymously. So how is it? How much of it is okay to adjust? Even if it is not okay with me, I'm okay with it. I mean, I'm going to, that is not something which we call as adjustment. We actually call it as global adjustment. We have in that psychological adjustment, emotional adjustment, physical adjustment. So adjustment for us is like within the resources, within the conditions, we are basically becoming comfortable with it. But the adjustment we actually refer to in a layman term is even if you're not comfortable, you're adjusting. So we need to understand the difference. So for me, adjusting with with all the things and people and situations and context around, which makes us comfortable is adjustment. Are we talking about it? First thing we need to understand that. So when we understand that, then we train them like that, right? So that is very important. So are we training from that perspective, or we are training like, okay, today you don't have something that you want to eat, but you adjust with that, which you actually don't even enjoy. So if that is not an adjustment, it's like enforcing something on a child. Or nowadays a lot of all these demands have cropped in. So what to do? And the suicidal tendencies also that you have basically put forth for you. I just wanted to share something now. When we just started this session, and I started to talk in about a few seconds, I received a message on my WhatsApp that one of my colleague has actually ended life committing suicide. So in fact, so how did I now cope with that? How did I take it? So my focus was on the session and what I would like to tell. Immediately, that what I would probably do at this present moment is this, that I'm able to be with you, and I hope I'm able to put forth myself in a manner that I generally interact. These things, a lot of things happen, but if I really know that person very well, so it's a very emotional, obviously there will be one spurt of emotional disturbance that can happen, but how quickly you come back to the reality in what kind of context you are. This is a very important ability that I want everybody to learn. In fact, it's very important that a lot of things, we all know that many certain things are actually going out of our control in our lives. So how do we understand it? Not adjust in a layman terms. Understand and adjust in the way I told, psychologically, mentally, and emotionally to that. And I'm okay. Okay, something has happened. Somebody said something to me. Something very bad happened in my life, which now, or I have a bad experience or a bad relationship or anything that can, my salary has been cut, I'm supposed, or I'm in such a financial crisis. All of us are probably many people have been expressing all of that, and so many issues with the medical assistant that is lacking. Somebody's mother needs to go for chemo, but you can't take, and you're anxious every moment in the situation. Actually, the situation actually has made things more visible, but they were always been there. So mental health, as I said, always has been there. So if somebody has today ended life, now shall we say that because of the lockdown the person has done that? No, there would be a lot of probably even I wouldn't understand immediately, but there would be so many things that are happening from a long time, at least from some time. It doesn't, nothing happens suddenly. But as a person, even if it is happening in your house, in your life, to yourself, when it started, this whole COVID thing started, first thing that I have basically had to sit down with all of my people, my students also. I made some YouTube videos for my students and try to communicate to them how to understand the situation. And anybody can be a victim. For the virus, it is just a human being, right? So you can be a victim anytime, any point of time. Now, for me also, as on today, I'm maybe thinking that I'm safe, but I wouldn't know whether I'll be safe for another couple of months or another down the line 6 months. I wouldn't know that. So, but how do I understand if anything happens, or how to actually secure yourself even if something happens? So this understanding, and this is the adjustment, and how effectively you turn everything that around you favorable to yourself is the adjustment I want everybody to understand. So once we understand that, that is very important. If we don't understand, then see, a lot of things, and many times people describe, I mean, it falls on you on like a mountain. Things fall on you like a mountain. It's like you will be crushed under that. But one thing I always remember, I know it sounds philosophical, but I think there's always an opportunity till you are able to breathe. If you're able to breathe, you're alive, which means there is a possibility they can handle things. But I will never undermine if somebody has made decisions to end their lives and all, because this is somewhere there is so much of cry for help, need, and talk or whatever, and the circumstance in such a way that they didn't really feel like. And this one story I was listening to, one couple, I think in Maharashtra or somewhere, they have been writing several, they want to go for euthanization. They don't want to live anymore. So they want to end life, but that is not going to happen. It's not legal in our country. It's not happening. So the ending life is again some people's how they feel about it. Okay, how you feel about living a life, how you feel about ending a life, and these are all very important concepts that we are supposed to understand. But definitely, I think it's worth giving a try with the resources and actually learning how to adjust. Not that adjust. If you are adjust,
Yeah. Madam has gone off.
Ma'am?
like
Anupama, Madam Anupama.
that, I think uh, you know, there is always a chance that you give up. Hello.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
seem to have gone off.
Yes, I think I did. I answer all the questions, or
Ma'am. Yeah.
anything else?
Okay, no, ma'am. Thank you.
If anything else, one or two questions I can take, or
Yeah,
I think I
just-
exceeded the time.
No, like I have, that's why I summed up asking about adjustment so that it covers everybody's question.
So to just add one more, madam, adjustment. You can teach children how to adjust. This kind of adjustment.
Yeah.
You should train them. That's why psychologist is very important to have in education setting.
Yeah.
That is their job to do that.
Yeah. Srilata, have you finished all the questions?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Madam, there's actually one beautiful question by a teacher and a parent. She says, my question is, what are some of the ways in which you think the stigma attached to visiting a psychologist can be ruled out in our country? This is a very important question.
Yes, it is very important question. Like I said, I think the day we, at least the educated lot, understand that it is as simple and as important that we have a physical health problem, that we'd like to visit a consultant who knows more than us. Okay, TK will have some little adrak ki chai if you are feeling irritated in the throat, that is going to sort out. Is our way of looking at things, but that we go always beyond that, right? Only then we think about it. So we should also understand that, like we experience physical discomfort and make a decision when to go to somebody who knows more than giving adrak ki chai, we should also know that yes, there is a level of discomfort in understanding, having a not able to understand, not able to make decisions, not getting frustrated, getting irritated, and all of these symptoms, like I said, sleeplessness, unable to think properly. See, one of these recent actor also been having hallucinations and stuff like that. So these kind of things, so all of these have to be noticed within ourselves. So for that, self-awareness is very important. And we need to have these conversations every day. You should have conversations with people in your family. Very, very important to understand all underlying any feelings, experiences, discomforts. So anything that you see that is fitting into these symptoms, one should make a quick decision that yes, psychologically also we can go to somebody. There are people who can professionally render us help, and not again expect, like I said, like with one tablet it is going to go away. No, we need to have a few sessions, because this would have become a problem, has come surfaced for going through certain things in life. So it will take some time to also get cleared off. So that actually, if we can, we believe in that, we understand the importance of that psychological health, the mental health is as important as a physical health. And overall it's one health. Let us take it as one health as a whole composite. So then we, as educated people, we understand the importance of it. We will definitely not feel uncomfortable going to a professional and seeking help. So once we, even for example, how many of us, see, we as psychologists also have our own supervisors where we consult, and we also go on talking about our own dilemmas or whatever things that we have professionally, personally, also very important. All of us are, tell me on this earth, who is any human being who will not have any physical or psychological discomfort which is posing internally or externally. And that is how we have built it, we have created it. And then you don't want to accept the consequences of it, and you sometimes you think that it is because it is not okay, so you get stigmatized and you want to suffer. And today, these all big issues like depression, suicide, all are coming out. Who are responsible? It is just one thought that yes, I can still go and seek help, and there's nothing wrong, and we should talk about it more openly. So there's no problem in talking about it, and there's no problem in going and talking about a problem to somebody who can help us understand that problem.
Yeah. Madam, how can I thank you for this session? Because it was a wonderful session. There are so many messages the participants have been posting, appreciating the session, because it was truly wonderful, awakening. But one small, since we are running short of time, since you are in the university, as you have already put it in your own words, in other countries, this mental health issues or education related to this is part of curriculum right from primary sessions.
Yes.
In our country, why is it that we are unable to push it even at university level? Why are we not able to make it mandatory?
Madam, to be very frank, I think our country is somewhere, taking a lot of time for things. I think probably maybe I wouldn't blame anything, all the governments or whatever, but I think we're trying to pace up, because see, sometimes we are, you all understand about so many other facets that influence our whole country as a whole, right? So we are quickly able to adapt to all those changes. For example, we talk about LPG, globalization, what so we're able to adapt, but then how that is going to influence us or all, we are still trying to develop. So I think in this we are actually very, very slow, especially on issues that are very important. For example, even coming to Corona, how are we basically trying to adapt to those things from other countries also we are doing. But I think it's for me it is it's like hamara ghar hai na, apna ghar hai, to hai issues hai, so how do we even we need to learn, but some things can be taken very quickly and on a war footing, so that I think it all has to come collectively, as we're all collective minds. So the needs have to come and put forth very collectively. So as you see, even for example, you assume that there is a mental health facility everywhere for us. But if we as individuals having stigma and discriminating people, do you think anybody would go? So then the change has to come from within, how we see ourselves. So where this narrative has changed has to be really explored, and then we need to adapt and we need to accept these things. These are very positive changes that we need to accept. So at least see, we have role models of other countries. So are we, as I said, there is no mental health task force only till now. We don't have a regulatory body only till now for psychology. So we have been like asking and talking about, but again, in a country like ours where there is so much of population and we are trying to bring in so many elements, I think for a policymakers there are many other priorities, and we are also not putting this like mental what is there, you give a call to a friend, ghar mein baith ke, our own family structures are there to help us. We have always been trying to be very heroic in thinking that we are adjusting and we are able to manage things personally, because we also know if somebody is having a problem, we know how others treat them, right? And if somebody is having problems, so I think once only it's our problem for those things to get highlighted. We need to change and perceive it and accept and become more open and kind enough, so that that this major change can happen. Then only the pressure can happen. If we have associations, we have boards, we have been going and talking, writing from almost more than a decade, but where is it coming from the public?
Correct. True. Yes, Srilata, do you have to ask, madam? Last.
Yes, please. I have no problem. Yeah, I can take it.
Yeah,
I can only share what I know. I'm making an effort. That's it. Yes.
Yeah. Very quickly, we will wind up. Yes, Srilata.
Yeah, we were just like, how much importance is personal hygiene and sanitation important for you?
For me?
How much important is personal hygiene and sanitation important for you?
Okay, so I think I am as any person like you are. I think for any individual, any human being, it is extremely important to have minimum level of personal hygiene. That level of hygiene where you are not going to get affected by anything from external sources. So that much of hygiene is very important. But we cannot get, see, in fact, if you actually talk to microbiologists, we are all full of worms everywhere. So we are all everything. If you actually put microscope and see that, you will be jumping out of your chair right away. So, but then within that, what makes you thrive? So this is always a healthy, microbes. And so are we making ourselves vulnerable or exposed to unhealthy microbes is very important. For example, in our arts college yesterday, they were doing fumigation. So we were just talking about, I was just thinking that, okay, if we do fumigations generally in labs and all, they do it. What is it going to take care is just basically trying to keep away all those microbes and bacteria. But are they going to be effective on viruses? No, we know that, I think as far as I know, it is the soap water which has always been advised. So it's good that, you wash your hands definitely, or use a sanitizer. So this is something, the information is very important for anybody. What level of personal hygiene that you should have? Are you going to bathe every day 3 times or 4 times or every time? No, it's not important. It's important that you're not falling sick. Are you eating food that is exposed? Are you cleaning? Now you have to clean more, obviously, but have you been cleaning or not, and how much you have to clean? So these are certain things that I think information is already available. So in that way, if you take information in right amount and understand where to draw a line, not if you completely avoid all these even healthy microbes. See, actually, if you look at your gut and scan of your gut itself, like I said, there are millions and billions of microbes there, and you need them. Right. So we need to know where to draw a line and how much hygiene you have to practice. I'm very particular about hygiene, but I'm not obsessed about hygiene. Now people are showing a lot of obsession towards a lot of hygiene and actually even missing out on good things. So I think this all comes as part of our education. Health and hygiene is very important. I think that also
Yes.
should be a part of our education.
Yeah, true. That's all, madam, for the question and
Yeah.
answer session.
So I think it's time for us to wind up this session,
Yeah.
madam. On behalf of Department of English, AV College, I'm Mrs. Vidyalata. I would like to thank you immensely, madam, for this beautiful session. I just can't tell you how grateful we are, because when I see the chat box, I have seen everybody giving you a thumbs up, saying that the session was wonderful, excellent, because as teachers, we all have many queries and still unanswered queries. It is, it keeps going on and on.
I think as long as we're alive, we'll always have queries about psychology, human
True.
beings, no? So
So
I'm always available as long as I am around. So
yeah,
anytime it's a pleasure to interact with anybody and
we
share.
are just hoping that we will have more extended interaction with you in the future as well. We need more.
Anytime, madam, and they're wonderful speakers and professionals in the field of
Yes.
psychology. So I think you should make an effort to sometime, if you have that facility, please bring on and learn more, have those sessions.
And as you rightly put it, our own correspondent, Secretary Dr. Ramchandra Reddy sir, is from Department of Psychology, and we are more privileged.
Actually, he's the one who taught us cognitive psychology, and today I'm very proud to say I'm a cognitive psychologist. We learned from him, so yeah.
He's a great man, yes, very truly.
Yes, wonderful professor. We had all wonderful professors in our department.
Yeah. So I would also like to thank my colleagues, because without them, this wouldn't be possible for me. This is something very new, this forum for us.
Even I would take opportunity this platform to thank each one of you. I'm sorry I wouldn't know your names except for Persis, and I think Lata is somebody who is hosting. So yeah,
Jessica,
so yeah, just
and Dr. Rajendra. This is my team, lovely team.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah.
And actually, yesterday, Dr. Mridula Lakaraju from Nizam also was on the session. Her session was also equally beautiful, because she was talking more about the technicalities of how to, get connected through social media to our students, and what are the various means to engage them. So these two are actually very interrelated. Make students more active rather than isolate them during this period. Okay, so I would also take the opportunity to thank my technical support, madam, because Vamshi from MCA department, Subhash.
Thank you, Vamshi.
Sushil, without which this would have been next to impossible for me.
Thanks to Sushil too.
Glitches initially and still have. Probably for the next session, we'll be more perfect. We have understood.
we are all learning, you know. This is a wonderful opportunity to learn so many things.
Yeah. So I would also like to thank all the participants. They are our support system, because without their feedback and their encouragement, this whole session wouldn't go the way it is going actually. Thank you all so much.
Yeah. I'm also equally thankful and grateful that you have given me this opportunity, and I'm really grateful to each one of the participants to probably patiently hear what I was sharing.
Yeah, thank you all so much, my colleagues, participants, and the resource persons. Please, I'm looking forward for more interaction from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Pleasure. Thanks a lot. Nice connecting to all of you.
Yeah.
Have a good day, all of you.
Yeah. Thank you, madam. All the participants, we have posted the feedback form. Please fill the feedback form and get your certificates. If there is a net problem with you all, you can message to us. We will share the link personally to you and get. Thank you so much, madam. I would like to end the session. Bye-bye.
Okay, ma'am. Good day. Bye-bye. Bye.